I'm going to show you something that you've probably never seen done before, or at least not done like this. I secretly learned a language for more than 3 years without my parents finding out. And all of these books here and everything you see here is all done analog, meaning I didn't touch a computer to do them. So I'm going to show you through the process of how I learned Norwegian for 3 years. And it all started with some local books that I found at my local library. Very tattered they were, and I just started copying them out because I only had several times that I could loan them, and I would constantly reloan them. And I would just start writing out the dialogues that were in them for me to keep as my own record. I wanted to learn my family's heritage, but I just didn't think that my parents would take to learning a language when you've got so much other stuff that you want to focus on. And I just copied out pages and pages and then would translate it below and then put like little symbols like the P if it's plural, like the vilka is plural there. I spent most of my holidays doing this, wasn't running outside or playing, and while most kids around the age of 11, 12, 13 were getting into trouble throwing rocks at cars over the overpass where I lived, I was learning how to count in Norwegian. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So this is how I learnt, through copying out dialogues. But I would also give myself quizzes and then give myself scores constantly, kind of like I had an imaginary teacher that was going through everything with me and learning about the plurals and I did have the opportunity of having Norwegian as a first language for a couple of years of my life, but then we moved away to Australia and it wasn't spoken at home. It was just English that was spoken at home, and I still wanted to keep the heritage going. So this book was so invaluable that I just copied it out, all the dialogues. And I really didn't have much knowledge on how to speak it so much, or what all these exact words were saying. And I probably still have the worst pronunciation for it today. But I can say that I can confidently read and write in Norwegian, but because of the way that I did this, I just didn't have the pronunciation or the listening skills because I decided to do it all analog and without the internet, because the internet would pose issues that they might find out that I was learning a language. Now, I know you're probably sitting there thinking, oh, look at these scores, not too bad, 46 out of 60, 75%, no study allowed for this test that I did here. That was like a surprise pop quiz that I gave myself. Like somehow I trained my brain, you're going to have a pop quiz, even though you don't know you're going to have a pop quiz. I don't know, I just didn't think that my parents would take to me wanting to learn the language of the country that we moved away from when I was very little. And there was no one that was Norwegian in school. There was none of my friends that were Norwegian. None of them had even learned or knew anything about Norwegian. And then learning to count in ordinals there. And it really also helped develop my handwriting as well, writing out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of a foreign language, but then also translating it back into English. Here is where I started to actually develop my language skills and to be able to use it to create things like my first tour or trip that you can go to Tromsø. And then I started to make my own dictionary to keep track of what words I was learning, because I didn't have access to a dictionary at this time, and I didn't want to start using the internet because of internet search history. My brain just worked differently. And then I moved on to the intermediate phase of Norwegian, or book 2, when I went back to the library to get the second book that they had there. I actually had a problem. They were missing book 4 out of the 5. So I had to learn while skipping a whole book, and kept coming the tests and giving myself scores and even pre-tests, just like in primary school, a pre-test of what I knew before I started the unit. And on this one here, I got 13 out of 40 before I knew the unit. And I'm pretty sure by the end on the post-test, I would have got 40 out of 40, I would have hoped. And doing the dictionary, just pages and pages of going through intermediate here, and just through all the units. Here we go. Me learning all about the human body parts in Norwegian. Rumpabola. Funny. And anyone new and are so hard to learn if you're Norwegian. Very, very, very difficult. And I think it was probably a year, 2, maybe 18 months later that I moved on to book 3 that the library had, bringing it home, constantly checking in and out. I'm sure the librarian was, what are you doing? Why don't you just go and buy these books rather than getting these ones here or just go get a Norwegian teacher or something. But I kept going, and I even did a Christmas tree one here. And this is one of my favorite things, was doing mind maps of a certain theme that was going on, and then including all the words that I could think of or find in other books, because I also had the opportunity to check out 1 or 2 few rare novels that they had in the library in Norwegian, and learning all the sayings, takk for sist, weather words here, things in professions, putting them into themes, and then all the Norwegian feelings, positive and negative ones. This one kind of had like a multiple layered learning experience here for me. And then I made a ski map of like a fake ski resort in Oslo here, where you come and you park down here. There's hotels and you can rent cars. There's an ice skating rink there. There's a hospital and a ski hopper, or the ski jump. There's the children's section, Barna Områda, and all the trails and the tracks that you could go on. And then the snowboard park there, and putting rules on it. No children under 10 in the snowboard park, in case they get hit in the head and don't have their helmets on. The main town here, the Hovedbyen, that you could stay in. And this was one of the first maps that I did for like fake Norwegian things. This was just absolutely fantastic. I love doing this, and just kept more and more learning. I think my grammar, but I think I was probably like 13, 14 by now. My English grammar was vastly improving, because now I was learning about coordinating conjunctions even in English, and I didn't even know what they were. Norwegian slang here, I might need to blur out some of these words here, but this one was super fun to learn. And we just can keep going on and on and on. And prepositions, practicing drawing my Norwegian maps in the area of Bordeaux there. So this here is an example of what I would do for each unit or chapter in the book to learn it, because I wasn't just reading it, I set out goals. So I would do a pre-test where I would test myself on what could be in the unit. I would do a look, cover, write check for spelling words. I would redo the whole unit, then read again the whole unit, write out all the dialogues. I would make a better verb chart, like I had flashcards and flash cues. I'd have 2 days where I'll just sit there at night going through and pronouncing it all, hoping it was right. Write half a page about a profession, translate 4 of the printed out dialogues, and then do a spelling test. So I gave myself homework. What other person have you ever met that at home would give themselves homework? I was such a geek. Still am a geek. And, sort of South Park drawing there. And now I was starting to write out sort of dialogues or conversations that people were having between themselves that were in chapters and things. And the librarian by this point, who was a fantastic person, was starting to print things off for me. And she never asked or never questioned why, and it wasn't in large amounts, but my parents still had not found out. And these art books here, it's kind of funny how I deceived my mum into getting more of these. When you have art at school, it would say that you would need these to complete the year lessons. I would shove all the work into one and keep one for these things, or I think it might have been one per term, like, which is every 8 weeks, and then, keep it going for the next one and keep banking up these books. Here are all the tests that I did with the scores, 24 out of 28. And then I started, as I said, with the librarian, getting out short stories that I would then translate. And yes, it was by about this time that my parents had figured it out. Not because I was starting to speak it, just because they had found these And it was the opposite. Unlike the maps that they've had issues with, haven't had any problems with this. They didn't get me a Norwegian tutor or anything like that. They just said, sure, you can continue. But they did do me one fantastic thing. They got me a Norwegian practical dictionary. The librarian even covered it for me. And you can tell how much that I use this just based on those finger oil stains there. Gross. But that's how much that I had flicked through it in the time that I had received it. So now I was lucky enough that, yes, my parents went out and bought me the next book that I needed, which was Advanced Norwegian. And things started to improve because I could speak to my parents in it. Not that I did a great deal of it, but they were really, really impressed by how much that I had learnt. But they had too many things going on. I did continue to do it the way that I wanted to, which was as an analog learner. And here is a map that I drew of Norway freehand, figuring out how to put in all the different provinces or regions of Norway. And this is the Advanced Norwegian book that you can see here. And I did this one faster than the others because I didn't have to hide that I was doing this. There is just so much, like I just can't explain. It's just, and then starting to write out, and my handwriting was just vastly improving. There's just so much of it. But the interesting thing that came from this, I then moved to Danish and started doing Danish, and my parents happily got me a Danish book as well, complete Danish. But one of the cool things is that when we went back to Norway, we picked up some awesome books, and I just spent all the time reading them. Lars Lol, Solkongen, even Harry Potter and the Mystery of Chambers. Sorry, the Chamber of Secrets. This one's really good, Marathon, and so is this one. Anton and Other Animals, or like wild animals. But what got curious more from there is that I started to make flashcards. Here's an example of one of them with telling the time. But I also started to give myself sort of homework spelling sheets that you would probably receive. And here are some of them throughout the years that I would make with the expressions that I want to learn. And these were the words. So it's kind of like a sheet that I would look at to learn everything. And week 42 doesn't mean it took 42 weeks. Some of these took weeks to learn. It just means it is the 42nd week of these, because they're all in order, and they each have a theme that goes along with it. Like this one here is books and pop culture. This one here is politics and prepositional phrases, as I moved into the Norwegian political system, learning about that. This one's education and mobile games and hobbies and learning to count. And then I went and did it in Danish, as you would have known. This is the English side here that I test myself. And this is the Norwegian book of tests. So as you can see here, here are all the test scores. So it's out of 50, each word was worth a point, then each sentence was worth a point. It's out of 50, and on the first attempt, I got 34, then I got 49, then 41, and then on this one here, the first time I did it, I got 24, then 2 years later, 64. As I said, it took years to get to where I was. So this is like the English side of recording all the scores. Then over here is my overall scores that I tracked. So doing all this, but despite all this, I would say that this is not the way that you should be learning a language at all, because I wasn't speaking or listening right until years into it. And even now it is appalling. But then I decided to do something really bizarre, and this will just throw you. I don't even know how to explain this, but yes, my parents knew, but I decided I wanted to be a Norwegian student in a Norwegian school with a Norwegian teacher because it felt like I had missed out on it. But then I decided, well, hey, let's do it in left hand, considering everything else was in right hand. So this is like my Norwegian language book if I was a Norwegian student, and it's in left hand. And I'm going through and I give myself fake tasks and fake spelling tests again, as if like a teacher is giving me these things to do to learn Norwegian. And making a travel brochure down here and doing it in my left hand, and you can see the left hand start to develop its own style, which is very different to my right hand. Here, this is my right hand, this is my left hand. So subconsciously wanting to train myself to have some form of level of ambidextrous, and I gave myself the Norwegian name Fridtjof, Fridtjof's Amazing Pancake Recipes. So that was like the fake alter ego I gave myself to call myself Fridtjof, and writing about an apple. So this was the book that was there. And here you go, a fake test from a teacher to give myself a score. But I only got 14 out of 91. I was been like a bad student or something. Then reviewing books here and stories. So this is my left hand going through here, and it was the writing is really small. Christmas time. I made my own music room of what I'd want it to look like and gave it a description. I even made a fake family tree. Father with muscles there, hey? Me. Music and super cool, yeah right. We've all fake people made up and on a Norwegian family tree trying to learn the different words, mother, father, and mother's mother and father's father, because that's very different to English, and translating Australian news articles into Norwegian. So that's how I learnt a language. And don't do it. Just don't do it. What do you think? And it was years later that then I tried doing this on Duolingo, and my opinion on Duolingo, it's fun, but it's not the best. Would I recommend doing it this way as an analog learner? No. I think the best way is to move to the country and immerse yourself in it and go get proper lessons. That's the way to do it. I did it this way because I'm dumb. Thanks for watching.